a yes, a no, a straight line, a goal. Friedrich Nietzsche, thus spake Zarathustra, the spirit of gravity. That quote I could meditate on and do a whole series on. But the idea here is that every entity, living entity or organization has a vision and a goal. And the more honest we are about that goal or vision, the more clearly we can operate in this world and ascend to the truth. My name is Mark Bernard. I'm a monetary economist. In this video, I want to talk about the current peace negotiations and ceasefire put on the table to Russia and what the reaction has been by each country and each bloc. In my last video, I talked about how you can concisely put oftentimes the truth in simple terms, and often it's the most clearer exposition of the truth. For example, Russia is expansionist and chaos. That's what they promote as a geopolitical strategy, at least implicit in it. Europe is cooperate and the common good. Turkey, play both sides. The papacy is for God and humanity. The United States, it's for economic nationalism, at least in its current form, and not all the people or the individuals. It's just looking at the implicit framework in which their geopolitics operates. So when the coalition of the willing, the heads of state of the UK, France, Germany, Poland met in Kiev, and they put on the table to Putin a 30-day ceasefire immediately, unconditional. If you want peace, just stop. Because it is all about just stopping. He rejected it because think about these old movies in, World War II, let's say. They throw out a smoke screen and then the troops would advance. He suggested something in Turkey, some convoluted language. I think at midnight he closed with a prayer. How inauthentic and fake that is in using people's religion. So he rejected it. He said no. And that's the messaging coming from Russia right now. But let's talk about the papacy. The papacy this morning, and they clearly said that we have to have an authentic, just, and real peace in Ukraine. And that echoes Pope Leo's conversation with a Peruvian newspaper that said, the war in Ukraine is about a Russian act of imperial aggression, full stop, period, end of sentence. See how concisely he put that? Now, the Europeans know what this is about, and they are putting it to him. If he wants to stop, he can just say, stop, Russia. But he doesn't want to. He should, because his economy's tanking. We've talked about that. But his geopolitics is expand and confuse, expand and chaos, cause disruption and unbalance. And everything he says is a twist of the truth. So what we can expect is, unless he's not going to, see the light and just say, okay, I'm a peaceful man now. He's not going to go for this peace, and sanctions will be increased against Russia. The U.S. response? We're waiting for this U.S. response. And it's been something muted coming out of the White House already that great things are happening. I saw that president in 2016 at a pre-election rally, I think it was, or whatever it was. And he was saying the same things. Great things are coming. There's not a lot up there. The lights are on, but nobody's home. Okay? He's no leader in the sense. I mean, Macron, sorry, my pronunciation again. The guy's a leader. You say whatever you want. Tusk, Poland, he's a leader. You say whatever you want. We could all throw stones at every politician and world leader. The current Pope, in my opinion, Leo, he's a leader. You can say whatever you want. And Zelensky, we know he's a leader. Okay? And the same goes with the British and the German right now. But in Washington, again, it's mixed messaging, confusion. It's a different agenda, economic nationalism. If we want to make the world a better place, we've got to keep on putting pressure on Russia. Their economy is going down, and I've said this. They can't sustain this. I mentioned in one of my previous videos that the oil is $48 a barrel. That's Ural oil. It's not the general price of oil. That's the Ural oil coming out of Siberia, of course. They can't sustain that. When the White House, on taxpayers, your taxpayer dollar, flying diplomats to Moscow and all over the place under the guise of talking, I'd be a little bit upset with that. I'd be a little ticked because, that's my money flying these diplomats for nonsensical talking. If they wanted this to end, and if there was leadership in Washington, the guy would just pick up the phone, call Moscow and say, you got to stop today? If not, sanctions. Click, dial tone. Anything other than that is weakness. I mean, this is disrespect for all your fathers and grandfathers who are cold warriors that we had to face and hold the line against this Russia. America was in that specific position of greatness because they were isolated from the destruction of World War II in the sphere of Soviet communism, Russia, Moscow. Poland, we've risen from the ashes they've risen from the ashes because of the spirit, okay? America was in this great economic position, but it doesn't have that anymore because the whole world grew up. They rebuilt, and there's competition, and they've squandered that geopolitical economic leverage on this economic nationalism and tariffs. And now they're retreating into their shell. They're still not going to be strong. Pope Leo's stronger. Tusk is stronger in Poland. The leader of France, Germany, and England is stronger. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, all these leaders are stronger. And I love America, but I don't love the MASH 4077 Frank Burns version of America that's kind of being broadcast. Either you are Frank Burns or you don't like America. I love America, but Europe is on the rise, and there's 1.5 more people in Europe carving out Russia than there is in the U.S. So if I really was for the U.S. and I was a leader, I would start building bridges and just remember who the real enemy is in this world. And it's the enemies of democracy and freedom and peace. Russia, Moscow is going to talk about stripping Ukraine of defenses and wants to have a meeting in Turkey and, occupying those regions. And it's all complex and it's nuanced. Whenever you hear the word nuanced, you know what that means. It's baloney. So the message is sanctions or peace. Russia's response, sanctions is it wants more sanctions. It wants economic grinding. The whole economy is a war economy. It's geared up on production of non-productive capital goods, and that can't be sustained. China, I told you what China's about. China is for China. That's him. Okay? It's mysteriously quiet during this whole tete-a-tete that's happening right now between the strong and the willing in Europe and Moscow, because China's for China. So let's review it again and tell me if I'm correct. China is for China. Turkey plays both sides. India plays both sides. Europe is cooperate and for the common good. And that includes Ukraine. The papacy, God and humanity. United States, economic nationalism. He can sprinkle a little bit of xenophobia if I were for what. Brazil, again, wants to be a regional player, powerhouse. But does that matrix of geopolitics make sense to you in the context of this ceasefire proposal? And if it is true, because I'm going for the truth, E equals MC squared, anything brilliant could be put on the back of a business card. Moscow, expansion and confuse. Expand the chaos. Is that not true? What's going to happen is more pressure is going to be put on in Moscow. And don't look at the intermediate term about the responses and the policing. I saw, again, the leader of Moscow ending it, I think, with a prayer last night. What hypocrisy. Yeah, he works for the other guy. Okay? What's going to happen, what the end result is this. As more pressure is being applied, because Europe's not backing down, I can guarantee that America may turn its head and run and declare itself as a vassal state of Moscow, or may not, we'll see, but Europe's not backing down. The papacy, it looks like, for God and humanity and for the greater good of humanity, we'd have to stick up for the innocent And that's the Pope basically was saying, what about the children of Ukraine? What about the victims of Ukraine? He's not making, he's a leader of spirituality. He's not a geopolitical leader. But he's standing for humanity. So when that happens, the grip, the economic, they're going to start using that oligarch money, which I think is good. I think it'll stabilize the markets finally. It will continue to go on Moscow, already depleted economy. And as a monetary economist, I can, with great confidence, say, mark me, the Russian economy is going down, and really there's no exit for Moscow other than the white flag. My name is Mark Biernat. I'm a monetary economist. Have a beautiful day. Thank you very much.